been. But the good news, well, I don't know if it's good news. I think we put it in here somewhere. I don't know. I won't know until tomorrow. It is important to note that COVID is still in play. And the AUW California policy is still in effect. And if you all may recall, that policy was pretty strict. You had to be up to date on vaccinations, which meant that you had to have all your boosters. You had to, we were doing full testing. Everybody got tested when they showed up. We were doing daily check-ins and having to be recording those daily check-ins. And the reason we were doing that was because essentially we were going opposite from the way National wanted us to do it. And so we had to go overboard. National did not want us to do a residential camp at all last year. They recommended everybody go virtual. And so because we were basically saying, no, we're going to do what we want to do. We wanted to put belt and suspenders in place and make sure that we had everything covered in terms of being able to satisfy insurance and the state and everybody else, that we were doing everything we could. This year, my recommendation, based on where we did what we did last year, and based on the fact that California has currently stated that they're not going to require vaccinations for campers until at least after 2023. And even then, I don't know what's going to happen, that we back off to fully vaccinated. Everybody still has to be fully vaccinated, but they don't have to test when they come in, and they don't have to have their boosters. What do you all think about that? Yeah, Martha.
We have to make it clear what fully vaccinated is, because we had thought fully vaccinated originally was that you had those 2 original shots, and then so I think we definitely, whether it's fully vaccinated and 3 boosters or fully vaccinated.
No, fully vaccinated is defined by the CDC as your first series. So your first series for an adult at that time, when they were defining fully vaccinated differentiating between them, is that you had whatever your full series was. So Pfizer had a 1-shot deal. You're fully vaccinated. Once they started requiring, but oh, by the way, if you're over 65, you need a booster. That's up to date. You have to be up to date to have your boosters. What we're saying is we're backing off of that and saying that we only are going to require you to be fully vaccinated. And so we don't have to track the boosters. If they want to put them in, that's great. They want to put all that information in, that's awesome to have that data in there. But in terms of what's being required, because we don't want to track those boosters. The trying to figure out who's ready to be boosted and who's not ready to be boosted, and making sure that you have, I think the feedback in general from branch coordinators, that was the most painful part of the process, was trying to manage booster records and then turning campers away because they weren't adequately boosted, which is never a fun thing to do. Pat?
So fully vaccinated could mean that they had their vaccines like well over a year ago, that they completed their vaccine series well over a year before they're coming to camp. With no boosters.
It could be.
And we're not testing on income, only testing if they show symptoms.
We're testing if they show symptoms, if they exhibit symptoms, but we're not going to require you to record that every day. So you're going to have to be observant. I mean, that's going to be, we can make you require it every day if that's what you want to do. I don't think you want to do that.
It didn't really make a lot of sense to do it, because if they had symptoms or tested positive, we just sent them home.
Yeah.
So then they're out of camp. So it just didn't make a lot of sense to do a report.
Yeah. the,
Yeah.
I mean,
So what about staff members? Is the same policy applying for staff members that they just have to be fully vaccinated, but
Yep.
not necessarily boosted?
yep. And that's, to me, that I would be, I don't know too many, and I know there's a lot of people that are probably in our groups. I know Fresno is a little bit different, but a lot of people in our groups who are at San Diego anyway, who are not young, who are in more senior. And so from that standpoint, should they be boosted? Probably, but that's their prerogative. And to the extent that they are not infectious, to me, that's the requirement, is that they be fully vaccinated. And I think that that's a reasonable requirement.
So does this comply with what the universities are also requiring?
So,
I'm
and
not sure what the current policy
they're
is. like
still
at UC.
requiring immunization. They never particularly or specifically, most of them did not specifically require testing. They did not require up to date. They just required you to be immunized. And so the recommendation, because so many of their kids that were coming in were 17 years old, which was like being a 13-year-old in terms of CDC guidelines. So they have, a lot of those kids didn't have boosters, and they just require fully vaccinated or a waiver. And if you get a waiver, you just have to be tested weekly, typically. And I don't know if that's changed now in some
So,
cases, but
Are
like
we accepting any sort of waivers at all?
medical,
Medical, not religious or anything like that, which we did have some requests for that.
I know we did. And I think that there are, I think we're trying to be as, I mean, the option is always, if you continue to have people that say, hey, I want to send my camper, you say, well, there is a virtual option. You have a virtual option available to you that won't offer you the on-campus experience, but you're probably not going to be able to go to this campus anyway, because they require immunizations or a medical waiver when you get to that age, to that point that you would do it. And I believe the majority of them do, especially the UCs, are still requiring immunizations. And that was, Joan, when were we there? A couple of weeks ago? And they said maybe not masking, but masking in some locations.
Masking indoors.
Masking indoors still. I see San Diego. So, and that will be, but they also told me that they're basically going to leave that up to us. They're not going to police it. They're not going to monitor it. They're not going to check that we have our records complete before we allow campers on site. They're not going to do any of that. They're going to trust us when we say, as we register the campers, that it's good. So the procedures that we will probably follow, and I'm just thinking from our perspective, is we will probably do a check-in and check their temperature and ask them a few questions just to, how you feeling today? You feeling pretty good? Okay. If they say no, or they come in with a temperature of 102, we'll probably send them to the nurse to be tested. But I think what we're trying to do is give you all a little relief, and at the same time still try to be safe. The reality is we caught less than, somewhere between 1% and 2% at check-in with testing, when we actually did check-in. And was that because we had a bunch of kids that were boosted? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
So kind of the other side of the coin is, I'll just say most of the staff is, like our volunteers are probably older. I
Yeah,
mean, they're not young. They're probably in a higher risk group.
but they would typically be the ones that are already vaccinated, right?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned about how volunteers may feel about being around a group of younger people who may have fairly long time since they've been vaccinated, and there's different variants out there. So that may be another side of the coin that we're going to have to deal with.
I mean, what do you think, Diane, Martha? You think it's going to be a real issue? No?
I really don't know. I know that there was some relief that some of our, and Stephanie, you might know from the dorm moms, what their thoughts were. But there was, I know, some relief by some knowing that everybody was in the same ballpark and everybody was currently up to date. But I don't know. What was your thoughts, Steph?
I don't think anybody said much. We just knew we had rules that, had to be followed. And so we did. And I really didn't hear any feedback about within our groups if we took our masks off, because the girls all had roommates. Nobody said anything about that. They agreed. They thought that was a good idea. My feeling is if these are going to be the rules, then this is what we stick to. And if somebody doesn't care for the rules, then we find somebody else to take the place of whatever they were going to do.
Do you think you can do that, though? Do you think it's going to be such a turnoff to the people, the volunteers that we need?
I don't think it's going to be a turnoff. I think living in Northern California, there's a big group that are not wearing, they won't wear masks. That type of thing, that I don't think it's going to be an issue. I really don't. Sometimes I think it's just making a mountain out of a molehill. I do. I think that we're beyond this now.
Well, I have to tell you, I've had, and I was just thinking about this. Well, who knows? By that time, maybe we'll have a flu pandemic or something going on.
Right.
And we'll be back to that one. It'll be a brand new one, and we'll have to deal with that when the time comes. But
right.
I think what from my perspective, and this is definitely kind of my opinion, and so that's all it's worth. It's an opinion. Is that at some point something becomes endemic, right? Mm-hmm. It becomes something you have to learn to live with, and learn to live with it in a way that it becomes more challenging. I'm hearing about more people dying from the flu than COVID right now, and it's like, well, so.
I think we're very aware right now, after all that we've been through now with COVID, that I think if someone that we're able to easily recognize the symptoms, we're also easily able to recognize the symptoms in ourselves, that we know we can get to it right away. And so I think what you've come up with is very fair. And I think that it's very workable.
Anybody else? We will be able to do bulk entries. So for instance, if, one of the pushbacks that comes from the board is, and because we've completely taken out any need to do any kind of check-ins, but if something comes back from the board and they say, well, we want you to at least check their temperature and check that they're feeling okay when you're doing registration. Okay, we can do that. In that case, we could do bulk data entry, keep a record as they're checking in right there on paper, and then go back into the system, in the new system, and upload everything at one time. So it will be much easier than what we had to do the last time in terms of trying to figure out how to get records entered. And this, I'm just talking through the staff process, how things will be defined. Very similar, the staff will enter that same general session. They'll apply in that same general session, different set of forms because they're in a different role. And they will then go through completing the preliminary, the application piece, and tell us what camps they want to work at. And as soon as they tell us what camps they want to work at, you will be able to get access to their information as an application so that you can then go in and say, okay, yes, I want to bring this person on board. I want to select them. I want to, I want to now move them to my session. And so that will be where you'll have the ability to manage that staff function as the camp director user. We're still working through on OneSource. We will probably have one link for OneSource that everybody will use the same link. They'll enter the camp that they'll do a drop down that says, this is the camp that I'm doing my OneSource report, and they'll be able to pick multiple. So if they're doing it, what will probably happen is whoever is the first camp that they're doing it for will be the one that picks up the $20 cost, or however much it costs right now, $25 cost for somebody to do their OneSource, which is an annual requirement. The live scan, Judy's going to do it again this year. She agreed that she would do that. So she's going to help us with figure out what we need.
Judy file?
A Judy file, yes. How is she doing? Is she got something? Have you?
I haven't talked with her recently, so I don't know.
Joan, have you finally closed with her? Because I talked.
Yeah, I got an email from her the other day. She said she's feeling much better and she was going to be in touch with me this week to go over some details of hiring and stuff like that.
Good. Okay, good. So what we'll be able to do is send her reports. So whatever reports, when somebody comes in that needs a live scan, or that, they'll be able to download the live scan form and take that. If it's a new person who's never had one, and by the one, it's a one and done. That's all they have to do for Tech Trek. It doesn't matter where they are in our system. Once they've done one live scan, that's all they need to do. They don't ever need to do another one for us again. And so that we want to be very clear that they tell us, I've already had this done, when they sign up, or no, I don't think I've ever had it done, so that we at least can get the paperwork started. It's going to be, and we'll go through all the training, but so from a training standpoint, our initial focus is going to be branch coordinators. And that's really the message we want to send to you right now. We got to get the branch coordinators up to speed so they can find their records during the application process, so they can see all the stuff they need to see. As soon as we're done with that, we're going to shift over and make sure that you got all the camp directors are trained, and any of the treasurers that you probably won't ever need to go in there, treasurers, but we're going to make sure that piece of it is taken care of. And so we'll identify any relevant training. And I'm thinking that will probably start, branch coordinators training will probably start in January. And then we'll probably, maybe the beginning of March, we'll start looking at focusing on camp directors. And here's how you can start finding your records. The cost is about the same. The cost for, yeah.
Could I say something? We might need to have training before then. I know we're already getting inquiries like from people who want to be junior counselors and so on. And
okay, so you're thinking you might need it earlier for staff. Okay.
Yeah,
that's fair. And so maybe we could do a separate little module that's going to be on the staff function and how to deal with, how to find staff. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
I think to be consistent, like on how we're getting junior counselors and so on, that we need to know how the application process is going to work and what we're going to do with that.
Okay. All right, let me rewrite this one here. I'll add that in to make sure that we have this defined so that, it's all clear with us. I'll make sure that's there. Okay. Where I got a preliminary schedule from Camp Doc, and they said, yeah, in January sometime. So that wasn't a very good preliminary schedule. I guess it, in terms of trying to define some specific training, they have a lot of support available on their website. And I actually was able to find some pretty interesting, they did a very interesting article or a webinar kind of thing in mental and emotional and social health, and talked about what we all could do. And I thought it was a great thing. And it's from Camp Doc. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool all by itself. The cost was, as I mentioned before, it was not on a per participant basis. It was on a group basis. Red Cap is on a project basis. So you pay for a single project that handles, for instance, staff. Another project that handles the application and nomination. Another one that would handle registration. So you'd create potentially multiple projects in Red Cap. So that made that somewhere, you know, between $1,500 and $2,500 a year. And then there was another $4,000, $4,800 or so for, I think it was $450 a month for campsite. On top of both of those, we paid a small stipend to people to help us with the system admin stuff. So it's never enough, but we did have that stipend, and that's what we're going to have to account for as we move forward. If we needed a help desk too, we would have to make sure that we had that kind of support at least identified. Even if somebody did it for free, we have to identify it as a potential cost. So those kinds of costs, all the admin costs, will be picked up by the program. And we'll keep them at the state level. But when we start looking at how much does it cost on a per participant basis, we're going to end up rolling that out to the camps. So for instance, if the virtual camp sends 150 campers and they send another 75 volunteers, then what's that? 150, 225. And it's going to run about $6 and $6.50 or so campers. So that's what, 225 times. So for them, that's going to be $1,200, $1,500 a year of cost that they're going to have to basically, they would have had to eat it, whether it was campsite or Camp Doc, but it will be not eat it, but account for it. It's not like you have to eat it.
So are we expecting those annual costs this year? Is that what you're saying?
For 2023, yeah, we'll probably budget them in this year. Yeah, probably. But it may be something we may allocate at the end of the year and just say, include this in your budget for next year. I think it doesn't matter whether it comes out of your pocket or my pocket at this point in time. It's all going to come out of the SPF pocket. We just need to figure out which, and the branches end up paying for it all anyway. But it's a matter of, do you want to take it out of, do we want to set it up as something that is going to be, and on an ongoing basis, it's going to be reflective of what each camp's real burden is. And that is the number of participants and staff that you have, rather than a flat, we're just going to divide that 9 ways, which was the old system. Is how we would have done campsite, because there was no per participant. Yeah, we can do it, divide it by 9. I'm okay with that too. What do you think?
And the 9 is the 9 camps.
Well, and I'm picking a number, divide it by 9, 8, 7, whatever the total is. But I think it's fair that, you know, virtual is going to really pick up the bigger, if they pick up the bigger burden because they've got the most campers or the most campers plus staff. It is what it is. And it's a true cost. Right? It's not a pretend cost. It's an actual cost that bears out. So unless somebody, has something that says, no, this is why that doesn't make sense, then that's probably we'll go with the recommendation. We'll go as we work on preparing the budget for January. That's how we'll probably lay it in and see how it looks. And I'm sure we're going to have lots of discussion about that with the state when we do get to do the budget. So, and again, participants are defined as campers plus staff. They're not defined as users. So like all the branch coordinators, that doesn't count as a participant. They count as a user. So, last year, as I was saying, we really could see a net benefit of a system admin, but I noticed that several of the branches last year, either I talked to different people who said, well, yeah, I did all of the stuff that was in campsite for our branch or for our camp. Nobody else did except for me, or somebody else did it and other people didn't do it. I know for virtual, I'm the only one who did campsite for virtual other than our Camp Today person. So I probably would assign somebody to this and say, this is going to become one of the responsibilities that you're going to do. And I'm going to probably have one at the program level too, a function that I can bring an alumna in to work at the system admin level for the program to manage that piece of it. And I'm probably going to pay them, we talked about it, probably $500. So you may want to think about making sure that you have somebody assigned to a function. And what Camp Docs should give you is the ability to pick all the roles that you want a person assigned to, not just one role. So if you want them assigned to multiple roles, you can pick more than one. Or you can take the responsibility for that or assign it to your assistant director or the newbie, something like that. You can give it to whoever's the newest person at the gig. We are going to have office hours again this year. And so that will be on Fridays again. Yeah, Mary.
Diane asked a question about, will Camp Doc allow for daily reporting and pictures
Yeah.
to families?
No pictures. Sorry. That's one of that is, I think, back above. I probably have a con up there somewhere, maybe. Or pro, maybe. I don't remember. At the beginning, we probably talked about what the pros, no, she didn't have it there. So yeah, the ability to do the pictures up there, we're going to have to figure out an alternative again. And Sandy and I have been talking about that. What we could do is there's something at the state level that we could do, because she does have a couple other programs that would like the ability to do things like that, share pictures, etc. And that's GovTrek and SpeechTrek that involve minors. And that's the real issue is involving minors and where we put images and some of the privacy concerns with that. So we are working on an alternative solutions, but no, that is not part of this package.